Hello, good morning. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for being here and joining this session. I'm sorry, my French is particularly bad. It's even worse than my Chinese, so I have to deliver this in English. A question could be, why talking about a Chinese instant messaging application in the context of an e-commerce event in France? Now, there are two main reasons for this. The first one is the relevance that the Chinese consumers have and are increasingly having when it comes down to consuming Western products. There are industries which are particularly relevant for markets like France or Italy, like fashion, luxury, high-end products, in which Chinese consumption can account for something that goes between 35 and 65% of global sales. So dealing with this type of consumers is becoming more and more relevant. And second is the fact that, like it or not, and for how incredible or surprising this might seem, when it comes down to the evolution of digital consumption, actually China is leading the way. They stopped being copycats of what we have and started basically showing how the future might look like. And so it is important to understand some of the underlying trends that most probably will affect also the Western markets and Western consumers in the near future. So the idea today is to briefly walk you through how the digital ecosystem looks like in China, and I can tell you it's totally different from what we know. And then what is the role that WeChat plays into this? And then we will see some case histories about how brands are leveraging this to push online sales to Chinese consumers. And then open up for questions. So the point is, we can skip this, China is by far the most digitized market, consumer market in the world. To give you some highlights on this. The two champions, so WeChat, the social media that everybody uses, and somehow Tmall, so the biggest marketplace in the country, they all have their own payment tools, which work both online and offline, and they launched them years ago. And now, roughly, more than 50% of the GDP of China basically is managed through mobile payments. So it's something that is totally at another level compared to what we normally see and can imagine. Now, why this happened? This happened, to me, to my opinion, because simply they do not have the legacy from the past that we have. Chinese consumers discover internet already with their smartphones in their hands. And so, if you discover internet without having the legacy of everything that we remember. I'm 38, so I remember the browser, and then the email, and then the social media, and then so on and so forth. And so for me, internet is in the end the sum of a subsequent series of silos that one after the other basically created this digital experience. If you don't have this, it becomes super natural for you to do everything starting from internet, starting from your mobile phone, and then going back. And so it was very easier to have a fast adoption of new services. And third is the structure of the social, the social structure of the country itself. Two main drivers of this. First, it is an economy which is big and still grows, and so young people typically have good jobs. And having good jobs, they have good purchase power. And so the young people, the millennials, who are more open to digital innovations are also the ones that the brands and retailers are targeting. And so the digital revolution speeds up. And second, the one-child policy, which means that basically up to last year, Chinese couples could have a maximum of one child, one kid. Now, not talking about the social implication of this, but the economic implication of this is that the wealth of a family keeps concentrating. And so you have young people having a good job and basically the wealth of their families, of their grandparents. And so they have money to spend, and they spend them in a digital way, in a digital world. And so suddenly, China becomes the best market in the world to test and push the digital evolution to its limits. Now, to give you a sense of this, basically last year, when the number of internet users in the States, for example, was roughly 3 times the number of internet users in China, the amount of mobile payment transactions, the ratio between the two countries was like 1 to 50. So 100 billion in the US, 5.5 trillion in China. It's basically a cashless society that has, in the digitalization of the transactions, basically the ending state of the digitalization of the whole everyday life of people. And so all the paradigms change, and the way people live their lives completely changes. Now, I'm going to show you a short video that was produced by the New York Times last year, trying to explain to Westerners what WeChat stands for and how people live their lives every day with WeChat. I'm going to show you this, and then we will basically debrief it and go through it afterwards.
WeChat is an example of, for lack of a better word, a super app. It's a Swiss Army knife that basically does everything for you. It's your WhatsApp, Facebook, Skype, and Uber. It's your Amazon, Instagram, Venmo, and Tinder. But it's other things we don't even have apps for. There are hospitals that have built out whole appointment booking systems. There are investment services. There are even heat maps that show how crowded a place is, be it your favorite shopping mall or a popular tourist site. The list of services goes on basically forever. But it's not the variety of things you can do on WeChat that makes it so powerful. It's the fact that they're all in one app. So why does that matter? Hypothetically, imagine you're sitting at home and one day you notice your corgi is dirty. You open WeChat, hit a few buttons, and a few hours later a man shows up at your door with some shampoo and a big vacuum. Your dog gets cleaned and he looks great. You take a photo, you share it with your friends, and tag the dog cleaning business. You haven't left the app. Your friend who likes Hello Kitty and works a boring office job is slacking off at work and looking at WeChat. She sees the photo of your clean corgi. She decides she wants her poodle cleaned. She clicks the tag on your photo and orders the same service. Within seconds, the man with the big vacuum is on his way to her house. She pays him, and he's happy because he got paid instantly on WeChat. She starts chatting with you to thank you. Neither of you have left the app. While chatting, she tells you about a new hip noodle joint. She says, you have to come. It's a schlep, but you accept. She orders food while still at her desk. You order a taxi. She pays for the food. On the way to her house, the man with the big vacuum invests the money he earned from both of you into a wealth management product that's probably a little too risky. Neither of you nor the man with the big vacuum have left the app. Both of you arrive and the app tells the kitchen you're there. Your WeChat profile photo pops up on the wall. It's an old photo from the year you had that weird part in your hair. Of course she makes a comment. Your food is served. You notice your meat is a bit overcooked, so you snap a photo and post a disparaging restaurant review. You're already on your phone and you remember you still owe your friend money because she paid. You transfer her money. Neither of you, the man with the big vacuum, nor the restaurant have left the app. At the restaurant, there are no menus, there are no waiters, there is no cashier. There is only WeChat.
It might sound a bit like 1984. The point is that we experience similar things also here. The point is that we do them basically mixing different applications, different ecosystems that often do not talk to each other. And the scale at which we experience this, it's very limited. It's some cool brand user cases that we see somehow, somewhere, sometimes. But there is the standard way of living. Now, there is one important point here. Think about the two ladies at the restaurant. Was it an e-commerce transaction, a physical transaction, social transaction, mobile commerce? In reality, it doesn't matter. In their mind, they just want to make purchases, to live experiences. And they do this by digitizing the way they normally live their everyday lives. So all the differences and all the omni-channel things that we consider basically are legacies from the past. And so the e-commerce adoption and the e-commerce injection in their lives is complete. because they don't even see and perceive it as a barrier, as anything different from what they would normally do. So, in the end, WeChat is, to my opinion, internet as a millennial would design it, if he or she could design it from scratch. Because it starts from a messaging app that has a QR code reader. Now, a comment on QR codes. Everybody doing marketing will tell you that QR codes are something to avoid, because they never succeeded. They never worked. That's the bottom line. China is the exception for this, because QR codes are super functional and work pretty well. And Chinese consumers are pretty functional and seek things that work. And in fact, just to give you an idea, they scan within WeChat roughly 80 million QR codes per day. So everything is converted into a QR code and enjoyed and leveraged through WeChat. Second is a messaging app. After all, if you start doing things with your smartphone, the first thing you want to do is communicate. And so you text. But then you also want to talk. In a world like this, the phone number stops being your real ID. Your real ID is your WeChat ID. And through this, you can connect with everybody. And it doesn't matter if it is a voice message, a text message, a phone call, a video call, whatever. You just communicate with this tool. At the same time as you communicate with brands. And so you can receive news, RSS feeds, all in the same place, all with the same experience. And then there are services that are provided by WeChat sometimes, or can be provided by third parties, like the restaurant we saw in the video. Now, they created this beacon, cool stuff to basically submit the orders and prepare the food. It's something that third parties can develop and make available using our platform. And so restaurant reviews or whatever. And then there are, geolocalization services. And so you can look for coupons, discounts, services that are next to you. And as a merchant, you can leverage this information to target your messagings and your activities. And then, obviously, is a social network in the end. And so you can see what people post, like any wall or things like this. And so there are plenty of social features. And then there is the famous wallet. So all this. If you have all this, it's pretty easy to add something similar to what a PayPal thing could be. But then, if it is linked to all this ecosystem, it can be then connected to everything you do, going from money transfer to paying utilities, to paying physical stores, to e-commerce, to whatever you want. And then social games, this is something that people don't know, but typically in the world, we are quite famous for WeChat. In reality, Tencent, so the company that developed WeChat, is the biggest publisher of video games in the world. So our core business actually is video games. It's not even WeChat. But then, if you have this ecosystem, putting social games into this experience, and so having people challenge each other from the chat or from the official account or from others, or in physical places through the QR codes, everything becomes suddenly possible. Transfer money, etc. And so, just by putting all this together, in reality, the most comparable thing to WeChat in China is internet as a whole. It's a logical mistake to compare it to any application. In reality, it's internet. Totally redesigned, starting from a mobile phone and starting from the things that young internet users typically do with a smartphone. And so results and KPIs must be read through the lenses of what internet could be in such a huge market. And so the 1 billion users, or just one point here, 1 billion users monthly. The interesting part of it is that more than 900 million are daily active users. I mean, if you have WeChat, you use it every day. Because sooner or later, you do something with the internet, and so you do something that passes through WeChat. 1+ million transactions per minute. Because as we said, basically it's a full-fledged economy that is based on this infrastructure. To give you an idea of the size of this, It's like, we have like 70% of our users that spend roughly 10 euros per month on WeChat in small payments, micropayments. This is like, the Luxembourg GDP. Or if you compare it to our, my dear small Italy, we have 6% of WeChat users spending more than 500 euros through WeChat. It's like, having the entire Italian population spending their capacity and 1/3 of that directly in their WhatsApp, if you want to compare it or drive something here. So the point is this whole ecosystem develops and progressively opens up to other markets. And we will come to this later, but basically, the point is that we are making this available also to merchants around the world. And so merchants can accept payments through WeChat from Chinese consumers. Now, I hope I gave you an idea of how logically different this is from the application, the social media, and the internet logics that we have somehow entrenched in our minds. No? This is something totally, totally different. So what brands do it with this? And how to leverage this to make money? So the good news is that, after all, the consumer decision journey, so the path to purchase, basically is the same also in China. And so you got to attract and engage the audience, and then you got to convince them that you're better than the others, and then basically you make the transaction. The difference is that WeChat basically lies behind all these steps and enables the design and execution of fully integrated digital strategies for this. So first step, you got to have people know you. And here there is one fundamental difference between China and the rest of the world, which is this. For a Chinese person, WeChat is the place where they live their lives. It's where they have their bank accounts paired, they have their own IDs and driving licenses. They are distributed through WeChat directly. It's where they chat with their friends. I mean, it's very intimate. And so they do not expect to be bombarded by tons of small banner advertisings. For them, advertising must be relevant. And that's why we basically control advertising pretty tightly and do not want to leverage it too much. Consider that now official figures will be published, I think, later this year, but basically, advertising for us as Tencent accounts for less than 20% of our revenues, which is totally different if you compare this to Facebook or Google or the others. Because in the end, what we want to do is to create experiences that are valuable for our users. Because, again, WeChat is their internet, is the digital infrastructure of the country. It's not just a place where people have fun. And so we can see some examples of this. This is a typical advertising on WeChat. So I'm checking my moments, my feed, and I see one basic brand promoting its product. I click on the video, and the video starts. And it stops. Probably it's loading. So the point is, OK. And then it goes on again. So I click, I see the video. In this case, Officina Panerai's watchmaker was having this Wallace, who is a famous actor, traveling across Florence and experiencing different typical Italian experiences. So watches and chess, watches and art, watches and food. Now, if we were in the Western side of the world, the experience would end here. And we would be happy that somebody clicked on the video. In this case, it goes on and on. So after the video, I am directly moved to a landing page exposed by WeChat. And from this, I can browse a full-fledged mini site, which is external from WeChat. But I don't perceive it, because I'm browsing it within WeChat. And from this, I can see tons of other things. Like in this case, is like the Luminor Panerai watch with the Florence map. And every icon is a different experience that this actor did in Florence. So you see, this advertising driven experience is long and deep. It's something that we would never do. We have cases like this in which the interaction rate has been more than 10%. If you consider that our digital advertising in the western side of the world sometimes have a click-through rate which is like 0.something%, it's totally different. Why? Because we restrict the access to this super selectively. The philosophy of WeChat is this advertising must be a service that our users who are passionate about watches, Italy, art, who have a purchase power which is consistent with the price level of these products, etc., will enjoy. And the other thing that we do is that a single user can see a maximum of 1 sponsored content per day. So we are super restricting this business line for us because we want this to be relevant for our users and so effective for brands. Now, the point is that the whole communication becomes different. It's not just about burning media buy and keep producing content just to float the market. It's just about selectively designing experiences which a brand thinks could be valuable for their target audience and deliver them selectively. It's totally different. To a certain extent, it can be considered more mature than our social media because it's more one-to-one, it's more concrete to a certain extent. Now, after this fantastic advertising, assuming I have engaged the right audience, what I do? What typically happens is that users are directed to what we call official account. The official account is, let's say, the official channel of a brand on the platform. Now we'll see an example, but the point is that you can imagine it as a mix of a website, an application, a Facebook page, a WhatsApp channel. I mean, it's basically the cross of all this. So I have WeChat, I have my friends. Among my friends, I have Valentino fashion brand. And as you can see it is basically a chat. I could type messages and Valentino could reply, or I can browse it using this menu bar. And every button can redirect me to contents which can be posted on the WeChat backend or could be external links. So in this case, Valentino, to give you an example, created last year, I think it was, more than 20 HTML5 frames with a dedicated content management system just to manage this channel. And all this is sourced from their digital asset management system and platform and linked to their CRM and e-commerce platforms. So is their internet presence totally redesigned around this type of experience? From a BCG research, consider that the direct access to websites, so people typing www something, account for less than 5% of the total time spent online in China. People spend roughly 55% of their time online within the Tencent ecosystem, and 35% only on WeChat. And so this is the place where typically brands engage and sell, and we'll see afterwards, to their followers. There is one other important difference here. Obviously, official accounts can broadcast messages to their followers. It's a chat in the end. Now, the point here is that, again, the philosophy of WeChat is you have to be relevant for your audience. And so, how do we control this? First, there is no algorithm. So if a brand has 1,000 followers and broadcasts a message, the phone of 1,000 people will ring. They will get a notification, exactly as they had received the message from one of their friends. It is exactly the same thing. In the philosophy of WeChat, a brand and a friend are both, important in the same way for a person who decided to become friend of this person or follow this brand. It is exactly the same thing. On the other side, we have to avoid, our users being spammed by all these messages, and so we limit them. So a brand can broadcast only 4 messages per month. So again, it's similar to the advertising thing. You have to broadcast messages to send contents only when you really have something important to say to your audience. And if you have it, they will receive it and they will read it. And you don't have to pay anything for this because you are providing available services to them. So think about how the reflection for online sales this is when it comes down to marketing. Is again not about volume, it's about creating something which is valuable for the audience. As I was saying, you can always send messages to a brand, and they can reply. They can do this human-based with chatbots, with machine learning, whatever you want. Basically, you can connect this as a front end, as a customer care channel to whatever you want. Finally, you want to sell, obviously. Now, the point is this. Selling through WeChat is particularly easy, and there is a huge difference. And allow me this. Sometimes I get questions. Should I open a WeChat channel to sell, or should I be on Tmall or JD? It's exactly the same question as in the West. That would be, should I have an e-commerce on my website, or should I go on Amazon? They are completely different things. In one case, it's your direct channel. You do what you want, but you have to drive traffic there. On the other side, it's a marketplace. You put your product there, you get some organic traffic, but there is no particular brand experience there. And you have to pay a percentage to the marketplace. Here is not, because it's your channel. So it's really a matter of deciding which strategy you have for China. But this is the direct access to your potential clients. Then this is your channel. You can do whatever you want here. Now, how to realize, how to develop, basically, e-commerce within WeChat. Now, there are basically 4 ways to do so. First one is the most simple one, which doesn't mean that it is the most basic one. So the point is, as a brand, on WeChat, I have a backend to publish content. I have a payment tool to be added, and I have audience. So in theory, I have, let's say, 80% of what I would need to do e-commerce sales. I don't have a cart, I don't have all this, but if I want to sell just one product or just a capsule collection, and I want to do this very easily, I just create a landing page, link WeChat Pay to this, and I can show my products and sell them. Super easy. And we will see an example of how Dior did this successfully in the past. Second thing, second model, a brand could have a shop on the marketplace. We own a relevant stake in JD, so JD can be fully integrated within WeChat accounts. And so, in reality, I just have to link my store on WeChat, on JD, sorry, within my official account. Super easy. You don't need any coding or nothing to do so. Obviously, the assumption is you have a shop on a marketplace. Third option, I can skip this. Third option, there are brands which have invested in the past in building a full-fledged e-commerce site in China, which means that it is hosted in China, it is accessible from China, it is, all these things. The good thing is that they don't have to throw it away. They can just link it to their official account on WeChat and keep selling from there. So again, there is nothing to be rebuilt. It can be just linked. Again, the assumption is you gotta have a website able to, sell in China. Fourth option, which is the one that we are seeing happening most often now, is that through the backend of WeChat or through advanced management platforms provided by agencies and system integrators, brands can build quite easily relatively simple mini e-commerce sites that can be integrated within WeChat, being this official account or mini programs. And so it's pretty easy, basically, to turn the key and have your mini shop already full-fledged working within WeChat. Then this can be sophisticated as much as you want. So you can check availabilities automatically, integrating this with your supply chain, or you could do it manually. You can ship it automatically or not. You can have click and collect. You can do whatever you want then, basically, in terms of operations. But the technology, basically, is already there. So some cases of how brands interpreted this. As was mentioned before, one case which is old, but it's I think always pretty useful to start understanding the logics behind this, was Dior in 2016. They basically had an official account with a good follower base. And so they created this marketing project, which was shoppable and worked like this. They said, well, we create a special edition of our shopping bag, Miss Dior, to celebrate St. Valentine. And technically what we do is that we just create a landing page that shows the product and allows people to select charms, drag and drop them to customize the bag pretty easily. There are 3 buttons. You can select in which order you want to place those charms. And then we make it shoppable so people can click, pay, and then receive it at home or collect it in a store. Obviously, there was a limited number of products available, only 200, and it was particularly cheap. It was just $4,200. So, what they did was sending a message to all their followers saying, this is cool, hurry up. It worked super well. I mean, they sold the 200 bags in one day. Why it happens is not magic, it's not just because WeChat is cool. It's because they had the right audience already engaged within their official account. And because of the fact that there is no algorithm, when you send a message that is valuable to that user base, they react. And so if you have 200, 300,000 followers on WeChat, you will find 200 people who will click the damn button and buy. From a technical point of view, that was super easy because in reality, you don't need a full-fledged e-commerce to do so. You just basically place 200 bags in your Shanghai shop, and then this landing page after the payment just sends an email to the shop saying, pick and pack, and then ship it, and it's done. So from an operations and technological point of view, that was relatively easy. The smartness of this was in interpreting the WeChat channel in the right way. And so basically, after this, all other brands did the same. So Valentino last year, Montblanc, Michael Kors, everybody started doing this. One other case is IWC. IWC went for a different approach. They already have a quite well-performing e-commerce site in China. And so basically, they just embedded it into their official account, into their WeChat channel. And so they offer simply straight the whole, basically, stock and their whole, all the products they have to offer. So in this case, it's an approach which is particularly easy, particularly straight. To my opinion, it can work if you have a good flow of incoming, clients, because it works well. The trend now is that you gotta do some marketing engagement, some marketing activities to drive people there. Otherwise, most probably, they will look elsewhere for discounts and other things. And so there is an evolution of this approach, which is what Officine Panerai again did. So a few months ago, they ran this advertising on WeChat and then embedded this feature into their official account. And so the experience is like this. I click on the button of the official account or on the advertising, and I'm redirected to their store, most iconic store in Florence. Within WeChat, I click on it, and I have this 360 virtual tour inside the store. So I can walk, I can see the dome outside of the window. I can have the full Italian experience, basically. And all the items that I see there are interactive. So for example, I click on the catalog on the table, and I see the catalog of all the watches. And then I can experience this full visit, and as you will see in a while, the nice thing is that everything here is shoppable. So they already had an e-commerce platform, which is the Richemont Group platform. The only thing they did is that they created this layer of engagement before it, and then link it to the platform. And so I see the watch, I like it, I click on it, I see the product detail. I can enjoy music, and I can purchase. Again, from an operations and technological point of view, this is pretty easy because they already had the e-commerce platform. They just built this 360 experience and place it basically in front of their e-commerce site. And you can see, you can basically experience the whole thing. This is pretty much a good example of what the trend is. So if you just want to buy something, typically you go on marketplaces. If you start engaging with the brand directly on WeChat, you as a consumer expect some sort of engagement, some sort of brand experience. And the good thing is that basically through WeChat it's pretty easy to realize all this, to execute all this. And this is very important, everything typically that you do now should be more and more always shoppable because they expect to fulfill the whole customer journey in one place. And so if they came here and were not able to buy, they would be disappointed. The marketing angle of this can be sophisticated as much as you want. So for example, Cartier as a permanent mini store within their own WeChat account, they select products that periodically change in this mini store, and then from time to time they link marketing activities to specific products. So for example, I think for Valentine last year, they had this special bracelet. They produced 150 pieces. Now the nice thing is that if you bought it, you had basically a bellboy delivering this to your home. Within the Chinese mindset is important because everybody in the neighborhood will see that you are buying something for Cartier, which is cool. And so you can play pretty much around this thing. Good. So this was pretty much all in terms of what WeChat is and how it can be used for e-commerce purposes. Now, the issue when having this type of conversation is that, as you can imagine now, we are talking about internet. So when the question is, what can we do on WeChat? The answer is whatever you want. Now, the point is understanding what makes sense for you specifically. That's the type of discussion you want to have. Thank you for this, and I'm open for questions. Thank you. Yeah.
We always see this kind of, maybe not always, we very often see this kind of success stories with already very famous brands like Cartier, Vuitton, Dior, etc. Do you have example of other success stories about brands totally unknown in China using WeChat and after several maybe months getting some return on this kind of investments?
Yeah. So I would say in Italy, which is the market that I've been following most directly for a longer period of time, so I have enough time to see this development. We serve roughly 70 brands, and I would say 25 or 30 of them are small brands. The ones which succeeded are the ones which injected WeChat into a different and more compelling strategy. Alone, WeChat doesn't work. Or you have to pump so much money to be visible that it doesn't pay off, or the risk is very high. So, for example, there are brands which are not famous in China, but have a good flow of incoming Chinese tourists into their shops in Europe. Because when they're traveling, they basically just stop by and enter. No? Through QR codes, they acquire followers for free, because then the cost is zero for the brand. And they leverage this base to start creating the right relationship with this audience, and then milk them afterwards with e-commerce sales. Typically, in this case, the WeChat boutique is an endpoint. Typically, they open it, but they also have some presence on marketplaces to drive more traffic. But the point is, it can work and it can be effective if you have some sort of contact point with this audience base, because otherwise it can be pretty expensive. That's why. Yeah. No.
I have a non-politically correct question for you.
I'm sorry, I gotta leave.
Who will win between Amazon and WeChat?
Amazon and WeChat.
Yeah. How do you compare yourself with Amazon?
Well,
in the future, how do you position yourself?
For now, well, I would say with Amazon and Facebook, for now, to me, this is my personal opinion, we are not, facing big issues because for now we are very much polarized in terms of user base. No? Chinese people, non-Chinese people, and this makes life pretty easy. In the long term, I don't know. For now, what we see is that users do not cross each other too much. I mean, Chinese people don't like Western user experiences. That applies to Facebook or others. And we do not, as Europeans, do not like the WeChat user experience. And so we are not, stepping too much one against the other. Probably there is an issue when it comes down to size. You keep growing, and then sooner or later you have to do something. But I think we are still quite far from there. Tencent is developing growth in different areas. So if you look how Tencent grew in the past years, it's basically by investing in other businesses. So it's not just going straight ahead against competitors in their core businesses. So it's really hard to tell. Yeah, I think there is. Oh.
Hi.
Yeah. Hi.
So yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
I understand one of the main reasons for you being in Europe as part of Tencent and WeChat is to find European brands and help them go to China, right?
Yeah.
Do you have any other missions? Is there going to be any other kind of collaborations, any other activity of WeChat in Europe, or are there some plans, ideas, visions?
Well, for now, the focus is serving European businesses that are still striving to deal with this complexity, and so helping them in leveraging this platform better. For now, our focus is this. There are things that, as Tencent, we are doing all across the world, but they're not, let's say, directly WeChat related for now. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. What is your recommendation in terms of use of KOL to promote the WeChat account?
So up to a couple of years ago, we didn't have any advertising solution in the platform. And so the use of KOLs was the only way to basically speed up the follower acquisition. And so there were something that brands were obliged to use. Now, they are not anymore the most effective way to acquire followers on WeChat. A wise use of our advertising capabilities is proving more effective. They can be effective in helping a brand to enter into the consideration basket of a consumer. So especially for new brands, for example. If you are totally unknown, you need some sort of endorser. And so in that field, they can be very extremely useful. And then probably sometimes there is a bit of confusion between KOLs and ambassadors, which in China are totally different. So KOLs, to my opinion, should be used, as I was saying, to help a brand, influence certain communities, having an endorser. Ambassadors are very effective when a brand goes with straight, direct communication. So the Officine Panerai case, the first advertising was extremely successful for them. It completely changed their numbers. but it had WALAs in it. Without the same actor, probably the effectiveness would have been way lower. Yeah. Yeah. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
I understand you provide consultancy for Western companies trying to reach out Chinese consumers, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, it would be great to have your contact points somewhere.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. We forgot to put it here.
I have a question. It's, is there a kind of a certification program like WeChat certified partners?
Yeah. So we have it. To be honest, it's not as sophisticated as like Google. It's still at an early stage. Basically, we certify partners only in two areas. One is WeChat Pay, where there is an online certification procedure to become a payment service provider that can offer WeChat Pay in that specific country. And the other one is for advertising. So when you see WeChat International Trusted Partner Agency, typically it's because we certify their capability to deliver advertising on WeChat. And we cooperate with them. So we control basically what they do. And our planners are directly involved in those campaigns. So the effectiveness is higher. We do not certify anything that stands in between. So everything concerning, the development of official accounts, mini programs, system integration for this, we do not look into that directly. Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. So until recently, European brands to accept WeChat Pay should have a Chinese company.
Okay. No. The situation is evolving pretty rapidly. So yeah, it's still a bit confused. But basically, if you look for WeChat Pay on Google, there is a website, which is the official one, and tells you which are the certified payment service providers in each country. And if a brand works with them, it doesn't need any Chinese business license to accept WeChat Pay, because basically they act as master merchant. So they are basically the counterparty that we see, and then they regulate the position with the brand. Yeah. Yeah. We have a second round.
Yeah, I've got a second question. How many users are active outside of Chinese territory? Because there is a strong Chinese community living all around the world and a lot of tourists also.
Yeah.
So I guess that we can reach Chinese people outside of China, or not Chinese, but Chinese original born people.
So we do not disclose specific numbers per country. What I can tell you is that WeChat is basically a Chinese phenomenon. So the penetration that we have in China is the same penetration, more or less, that we have in Chinese communities all around the world. So if you know how many Chinese, and sometimes it's difficult, but if you know how many Chinese people you have in your country, roughly, this is the number of WeChat users we have. In terms of targeting them, we support outbound advertising targeting, so targeting only the tourists, Chinese tourists, who happen to be in a given country in a given day. We support this in almost every country in the world, more or less. There is a long list, but basically all the relevant countries are there. When it comes down to local advertising, so targeting local users, it is something that it is available only in some Southeast Asian countries, like Hong Kong, Macau, I think Malaysia, in some of those. Because in those countries, we have a relevant user base beyond the Chinese community, and so we target them. Yeah.
In terms of recruitment, you mentioned QR code, KOL, ads. So for brands who is not well known, what is your recommendation in terms of priority in these different leverages?
Okay, so The overarching issue there is to be as precise as possible in the targeting to avoid dispersion and optimize the expenses in advertising, let's say the marketing investments in general terms. So advertising now can be extremely precise. So it's a good way to start and give it the first round. Because through WeChat advertising, you can be pretty sure that you're going to hit the right people. Consider that we profile users based on their purchase power, more than 120 areas of interest, or by the fact that they have been to a country in the past or not, or they are planning to travel to a country in the future. I mean, we can be super precise in this. So this is one. KOLs, only if you have very specific and selected communities that you want to reach. So, for example, now we are working with a brand that does cosmetics. And in China, there are 4 or 5 communities of KOLs which are pretty good in endorsing, cosmetics. And so for them, this could be a valuable option. It's harder when you talk about fashion, etc., because they are terrifically expensive, and it's very hard then to drive to a specific brand. And then what I normally see is that brands do not leverage at all their physical retail presence all around the world. For example, in Italy, we have this design fair, which is pretty big now, and it is held every year in Italy, in Milan, and then in Shanghai. Last year, some of our clients who produce design and furniture products simply opened an official account and exposed the QR code in their stand. Each one of those got, in those 2 days, between 2,000 and 4,000 followers. Consider that the cost of a follower on WeChat can easily be 3-4 euro. And so basically, they saved 10,000 euro just like printing the QR code. Good. I think we sorted it all out. So thank you very much for this. Have a good day. Bye.